Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys. This is Christine Nicolaou, one of the co-hosts, together with Ferrer and Daniel, this time live from Barcelona. And we have a very special guest today, as Marielle Lopez is joining us to discuss women in leadership. Marielle is currently the VP and General Manager of Consumer Healthcare Iberia for Bayer Hispania. Okay, Marielle, very good to meet you.
Likewise.
And also being here together in the office in Barcelona. We don't normally record from here because, as I told you, I'm based in Athens and we do this virtually. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
I am currently the General Manager and Head of the Country Cluster for Bayer Consumer Healthcare Iberia, so that's Spain and Portugal. Basically all of the Bayer brands that you know that you can buy without a prescription. Aspirin, Canesten, Supradin, Bepanthen, Claritin, that's a big global brand. Me and my team drive that.
These are big household names and that's a big title as well. Tell us, how did you get here? What's kind of like your career journey?
Well, I've been working in the healthcare industry now for 20 years, well, almost. I started out in sales and then I worked my way up through marketing. And then this is my second general manager stint. I have worked in 6 countries across Asia and Europe. So the Philippines, UK, Switzerland, Russia, Slovenia, and now Spain. And directly responsible as well for 14 different markets. So how long have you been, you were Coca-Cola?
Yes, I'm at Coca-Cola.
Danko there.
Currently Senior Director for Strategy, I have Southeast Europe. So part of countries that you have been in.
Slovenia, for example.
Yes, Slovenia is not part of Southeast Europe. Yeah, well, it's a tough region. Yeah, I really appreciate it, especially for strategy. But now, for example, we have Ukraine. It's been a very hard week this week.
I can imagine.
Yes, hard meetings. But still, it's a very interesting region. I'm also the GM for Malta.
Nice.
Doing my, how do we say that? In Greece, we say when the doctors, someone is supposed to become a doctor, they first send you somewhere, rural, with in a spell villa. Because that's the equivalent of it for GM.
That was my Balkan role in Slovenia.
It's Slovenia.
It's just like the Wild Wild West. First GM role, Slovenia.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Whereas Slovenia is half of Malta. Imagine. It's like very small.
Yeah. No, it's teeny tiny. It's 2 million people.
Yeah. Easy. Good. So, marketing. Now, let me take it from a different point, first of all. Also for our listeners.
Yes.
Thank you for accepting to do this conversation. I was very interested in your profile. Not only because of the great many things you have achieved in FMCG, but also from the being a female leader perspective within the industry.
Yes.
Let's start with marketing a little bit. How do you see things in marketing? Do women over-index in marketing?
In my teams, yes. We have more females than males, and that just happened to be the case, at least in GSK, in Pfizer, and in Bayer. I don't know if it's a pharmaceutical marketing thing. But yeah.
Pretty good sample, right? Big company. So I guess you have a pretty good sample.
I do, yeah. And I don't know, I think I can't really judge. And I can't say that for marketing it's a female, and I think also there are some stereotypes, right? That say sales, for example, is mostly male.
Yeah.
But you see, that wasn't the case for my team in Slovenia. And the reason for that is because in Slovenia, to become at least a sales rep for us, you needed to have pharmacy background. And most people who did pharmacy studies were females. So it just happened to be more females in our sales team. In Spain, I would say now it's almost 50-50, but certainly 10 years ago, we had much more males.
And you also started in sales, right?
I did. I started in sales as well.
I started in sales, almost second role in P&G was in sales.
Yeah.
How was your experience with that?
I didn't like it.
Okay.
I actually, So I have two experiences in sales. One was in the Philippines as a medical sales rep. So literally, visiting doctors, going hospital to hospital. And at that time in heels, when we weren't allowed to wear sneakers, in the hot, humid Philippine air wasn't very fun. And the second time I did sales was when I was in the UK. Okay, and this was now for Bayer as key account manager. Okay, I worked on the Boots account.
So kind of like different setups.
Very different setups.
Yeah.
For me personally, I'm not a salesperson. It's just not. I think it's a good training ground because you know the fundamentals. You know what it's like to be in the front lines. You know what it's like to face the customer, to deal with their problems. And I think it's super valuable for anybody starting, by the way, to start in sales, my opinion. But when I moved to marketing and then we did strategy and all the analysis and the creative work, and I thought, yeah, this is more me.
I completely agree with you that it's super valuable. Like I still go back a lot to my sales days.
Yeah.
But thinking also like as a woman in sales. Yeah. Okay. I was in a big multinational, right? Which means that there is a certain expectations with regards to culture, how people treat you, and then you're pushed out there and suddenly you have people of various backgrounds who also feel that they have some kind of power over you because we're trying to sell, of course.
Yeah.
And again, being in an entry role young woman.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that it wasn't a very... I had hard days, right? I went home and I was not feeling good about myself at all.
Yes.
And then the way that, you would expect also that the company is able to handle this, at least in my view, they're not very well equipped because they are equipping themselves for the inside culture.
Yeah.
But then people in sales have to face the outside world.
Absolutely.
How was your experience? That I mean, like also UK versus Philippines must have been quite different.
Very different. And also it was maybe 7 years apart, right? So in the Philippines, I was in my early 20s. In the UK, I was in my late 20s, still fairly young for both, but certainly with a lot more experience. In the Philippines setting as well, maybe culturally, when you're super young, fresh out of college, trying to sell to doctors, trying to talk the big science, I had a hard time, or the challenge was to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Right? But that goes as well, I think, with any role, but even more so when you're talking to very, very smart doctors and people who know a lot more than you about the science. But what I did learn, though, from that experience when I went into marketing is all of the marketing strategies that I did needed to be executable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew what it was like to go out into the field and actually put that into practice.
Yeah.
So I think that helped me become a better marketing person. And I think having more people start out in the field precisely avoids too much internal looking policies, culture of a company, right? Because you know what it's like to be out there and to take the bullshit, right? That the customers
Anticipate, perhaps.
And there you go. A more politically correct way to say that. Exactly. I mean, you are literally the front line of any complaint.
Yeah, exactly.
That is very difficult, right? And it's good to know that, so that then when you come in, you're like, I don't like this bureaucracy. I don't like this. This is too complicated. Let's make it simple. So,
were there many more women with you at sales?
there were, yeah. No, I think in the Philippines it was about 50-50 also.
Okay.
I can't say that it was dominant any which way, any gender. But
And you've been through many countries, as you said, and also through different levels now.
yeah,
And getting where you are today, did you see kind of like differences from one culture to another, from one level to another?
yes. I think so. Let's say the Philippines, Russia. I have to say, the Balkans. Yeah, the distance of authority. I think, like they say, right? There's very, very much levels are very important. Hierarchy is seen. So when you come into a room, let's say if you're in say in the Philippines, and then you say, or even in Russia, you say, well, this is where I want to go. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? What do you guys think? And I think the people there would say, well, the leader doesn't know what she's talking about. There's no direction.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas maybe in Spain, maybe in the UK, in Switzerland, they like their input to be asked. So they're a lot more inclusive. The distance of hierarchy is not so it's not so big, really. So I think if you're coming in with a sense of direction, you say, we're going to paint the wall blue without asking anybody, that's not going to fly either, right? So people want to be involved. So I think culture plays a big part in certainly the type of leader and the leadership style that one should exhibit. And say the Asian culture is very different, I would say, from say the Latin culture, right? So you need to know those soft skills, and you need to be able to adapt.
Do you see that there were some areas or cultures that were more difficult for women to assume these leadership positions?
I think yes. Although times are changing, but I think there still are. I mean, let's face it, there are still countries where it is less. Women in leadership positions are much less. Let's just put it that way. For one reason or another, whether it be, I don't know, cultural, or simply because the women prefer to do other things. It's very difficult to judge, really. But if you see, I don't know, women leaders of state. How many countries have women leaders of state?
Literally thinking about how parliaments represent very well what's happening, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's changing. I think women are aspiring for more. And I think the more women see other women leaders be themselves and excel in the jobs, I think more and more women will want to do that as well, right? And I think that's super important. That's why visibility, talking about, giving more visibility to women in important positions are super important, because I think it's more difficult to be what you cannot see, or flipping it, it's easier to be what you can see.
And we need to change a little bit, perhaps, what the defaults are, when it comes to the biases that we have. I was digging through some statistics for our conversation as well. And one of them is that 73% of women have experienced disrespect. And perhaps I can start even sharing, was going, I will not say in which, but I was in a very senior position, new company, entering the company where it's the office building, very excited on my first day. And I had on my first day 3 people ask me if I'm the new intern. And I was wondering, I am here, I'm 3-4 levels more senior than you.
Yeah.
If I were a man, would people feel that comfortable asking me this question?
Sure, biases exist. I mean, for me, for example, I've had evaluation reports where my point of improvement, or they said, well, the problem is you're too nice.
Oh.
Too nice. And then I'm like, but is that necessarily a bad thing? But the way then I had to reframe it is when I said, well, when has my being nice meant me being ineffective?
Mm-hmm.
Give me a concrete example. Otherwise, it is a bias against my style, my leadership style, speaking style. But that worked. And I had this very discussion with one of my bosses before. And I said, can you tell me a time when I was too nice that it became detrimental to the business?
Yeah.
And there was none. I mean, if you can resolve conflict, that should be a good thing. If you can get, I was going to say shit done. If you can get work done without going through conflict, that's a good thing.
And either way, if you were as a woman to go through conflict, you would be labeled with a B word, right?
Exactly.
So
there's a very fine line. Exactly. But I think we need to have those open discussions, really, when women get evaluated and labeled as, we see this, you're being too aggressive.
Yeah.
Am I aggressive or am I assertive? You're being too nice. Am I being too nice, or am I getting through the conflict without blowing it out of proportion? Yeah. I think you need to call it out. And I think it's only when you call it out that you can have the other person perhaps see his or her bias, right?
Yeah.
So,
And actually frame it through outcomes rather than styles. Okay, let's show it the other statistic that I had here, which fits very well. 66% of women actually get feedback on their leadership or speaking style when it comes to performance evaluations. Like you said, you're too nice to embrace it. What's that percentage for a man?
I don't know, 0.
Oh, very close. 1%. Okay, 1/6 to 1. So yeah, for sure that that's something that plays quite a bit on biases. Let me though put you on the spotlight from the other side. Sure. Do you think you have observed yourself having given biased feedback at some point? Similar way.
That's a really good question. And I think the whole aggressive, assertive bit, I was in the audience once and we had a new boss come in. She was a female. And I remember I was with my peers and then you're like, wow, she's really like, this is going to be tough. Side conversation with a friend of mine. And then I caught myself saying, but isn't that exactly what our old boss used to say? And he was a guy, but for us, it was fine. He was just being the strong man. He was just rallying the troops. And when she says it, it's like, oh my God, this is going to be a tough year. So I caught myself feeling that. And ever since then, I do check myself constantly. And almost ask myself, well, if this was a guy doing the particular action, would I feel the same? Whether it be positive or negative.
Yeah.
I think that sanity check needs to be done.
Absolutely, the sanity check. And for me, many times I try not to punish myself because, I do want to embody equity in a sense.
Yes,
but we have all kind of like grown up in a specific society, so defaults and biases are there. But again, checking. And you mentioned also speaking up, right? And when you see that somebody is acting on a bias, you try to call it out. Has it been easy for you? Did you like actively try to grow the skills?
I think I very early on felt like I needed to choose my battles. So I think when I was younger, more junior, I was hesitant to speak up because I felt a little bit, it doesn't really matter. I'm so small. I'm a pipsqueak. Nobody will listen to me. Number 2, I might actually get punished for it if I speak out. So I didn't. So I think growing into my own voice came as well with a bigger sense of who I am, what I stand for. It also helped that I had the backing of my superiors, my bosses. It helped that I was in a position where it was expected of me to speak out, right? It was expected of me to build a culture of integrity, of good values, and of transparency, diversity. And so I did. But I have to say, it did not come naturally to me as an Asian woman. It's not typical to speak out against high authority and to say maybe controversial things.
Yeah, or actually the kind of discussion we're having now, it's also sometimes things that put someone personally on the spot for what they have said. That makes it even harder, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not something about the objective truth of what the numbers are, but rather I've understood. The other thing that I've found myself also being guilty of in terms of bias is maternity bias. And generally being, trying to be considerate.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you might be excluding a woman because you're like, okay, this is perhaps too much work right now. Let's not put her on that project. She just had a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. But the good thing is now, times are changing, right? Here in Spain, now with paternity leave is just as long as maternity leave. And actually, if I were to say something quite controversial, it's easier to manage the maternity leave because women tend to take the whole thing in one blow, right? So you can plan for the 6 months, whatever, maternity leave. the dads, they might take a month here, come back, and they might take 2 months there, come back. And so it's a little bit more difficult
From a management point of view.
from management point of view. But at the end of the day, what I do love about this new regulation is that both parents are expected to take the same amount of time to be with their kids. And I think that's great because it puts women on an equal footing as men.
Couple of months ago, like small anecdote, I was having a conversation with someone, a very senior person in a big organization, and it's a he. And we were discussing about benefits. And then I was mentioning some companies that are actually giving increase at 5 or 6 months of paternity leave. He looks at me horrified. He's like, what? For me to be like 6 months in the house?
Yeah.
I have the kids. And he's like, I cannot be 6 months away from the business. I could be disconnected.
Yeah.
And I just looked at him and I was like, you do realize that this is what women do.
Yeah.
They have kids. And you could see like the light bulbs going off, and it's like, aha moment.
And I have guys, I right at this moment, I have a guy on my team and he's going to go on paternity leave. So, and I think that's great. And they should,
Of course.
So yeah, I think it's a win-win for men, women, and society in general. Hey.
Yeah. Well, we have a long way to go, but we're making progress and we need to be celebrating progress.
Absolutely.
And there is another side of you, Marielle, apart from the corporate career that I'm very, very interested in, which is serving on boards.
Yes. Yes.
How do you see the participation of women on boards so far?
Well, I myself am currently 1 out of 3 directors on the board of Bayer Hispania. Okay. So that's 33%.
Pretty good.
Not bad. If you look at Bayer globally, currently 1 out of the 6 people on the board is a woman. That's going to change because very soon next year we're going to get another woman. So it'll be 2 out of 6. So it'll be about 33% as well, which is not bad. We're still not at 50-50, but I think we're getting there as well. I think as more, again, it's the pipeline of women coming into the industry, coming into leadership positions, coming into positions that the boards value as well to get, so we'll get there, I think.
And we're in Europe, right? So the EU is also actively trying to help support a bit the gender balance. And we know there's a new EU directive that's going to be live in July, I think, next year. Essentially dictating gender balance, not specifically in either side, but gender balance in the boardroom. How do you see this kind of like actions? Do you see them as needed, or do you see them as like resulting in a bit of tokenism overall?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, quotas, right? I think it needs to be on the agenda. I think quotas, let's say, at the end of the day, at least in my organization, my team, I always want to get the best person. Nevertheless, if I am seeing candidates come in that all look the same all the time, then I think that is where forcing to say, look, in the final 4 candidates, I want to see at the very least 1 woman. If all you're seeing are the same, and forcing that in is also perhaps going to try to alleviate, maybe there's a bias somewhere in the recruitment system, right? So I think that's good. But when it comes to picking, we always try to pick the best human being. Man, woman, black, white, young, old, it doesn't matter. It has to be the best skilled individual, regardless of anything else.
It's very interesting though, because what you're describing is like a proper recruitment process.
Yeah.
And also, let me also give you some more background for me. I just finished my board education.
Okay.
And in an initiative called the Boardroom, which is supporting women to get ready for serving on a board. So we've been having some leaders also coming and speak to us as part also of the activities there. And one of them came and told us that, look, like he's on a lot of boards, boomer, white guy, typical. Look, if you want to get on a board, the only way to do that is through network. So you have to be playing golf with the owner or the shareholders, and you need to be having drinks with them. And therefore, it's very hard for you guys girls, to bring on a board because you don't do that stuff. So, Marielle, do you play golf?
No, I do not.
So how did you get your first board position?
Happily, it kind of came with a role.
Okay.
Like as a default, it's like you take the general management position and you're on the board. But I do believe in networking, though. I have to admit, personally, I don't do it as much, perhaps as I should consciously. I don't like it very much as well. I'm an introvert. I'm a big introvert. But I believe that we need not only mentors, but sponsors as women. And that comes with building relationships, perhaps with other women in good high positions that can speak your name in the rooms that you're not in, right? Those are sponsors. Super important. Now, where do you meet these women? Not nearly enough opportunities, I have to say. Because there's either when I was starting out, a means of networking was smoking. Because the big bosses go down to smoke.
And Friends episodes, right? With Raisin's boss.
So it is like, if you want to talk to the bosses when they're relaxed, you need to pick up smoking. And I'm like, no. That's not, but that's a funny thing. It's like you either had to do golf or drink after go to the pub or smoke. That can work in some cases. I'm not saying it's not, except for the smoking. I'm totally not for that. But we need to ourselves be more conscious that women need sponsors. And that can come, by the way, in the form of another woman or my sponsors. Actually, when I come to think of it, have been mostly men. So I'm one of those women who is in a leadership position because some great men believed in me. And I'm utterly thankful for that. And I think now that I see both, for me, I like to help young talent, whether that be males or females. But yeah, paying it forward.
Do you mentor officially?
I do. Yeah, I am a part of this program called Talentum.
Yeah.
And I mentor young. Well, up until very recently, I had 2 females just about to graduate from university. And yeah, I mentor them. So they're from all over Spain. I'm also part of a group called Mujeres en Pharma, Women in Pharma. And the idea is to help women have more visibility, provide opportunities for networking as well, to also give more visibility to women in high positions for more, so that they can also tell their story. And the cool thing is, I was in a panel where, there's the very typical general manager, married, kids. Another one was general manager, single mom with a family supporting, because of the grandparents and all that. And then there's also one other style, which is me, general manager, no kids, by choice, not married. And it's totally fine. And the women were like, that's great, because then there's no pressure to be or to conform to any type of mold. And
that's the role modeling part, right? That you need to have a variety and diversity with the essence of the word.
Exactly. And I think it's super important to say that whatever way you choose, and by the way, if you choose to stay home, be a mom, completely fine too, right? But I think it's talking about it. This is whole removing the bias, removing the taboo. It's okay to say, I choose not to have kids. Maybe another controversial thing to say. But there might be some women who just choose not to. And there are some women who choose to do the more, to have kids. And it's completely fine.
It is. And then going back and perhaps connecting with what we're just saying about the maternity bias. I find myself sometimes, let's say that we arrange for drinks after work, right? I don't have kids. Yeah. So at this point in time, I have more flexibility with my schedule.
Yeah.
And I do understand that in many ways, although I would like for things to be different, it's the mothers that feel like they need to go home and take care of the kids while the dads might be able to go for these drinks after work.
True.
So how do we do the networking thing better? let me say?
That's a really good question. And other than making some time for it, lunches, for example, when I was in Basel, in the headquarters, there people would book lunches. So and I would do that. Let's say I wanted to get to know more the head of, let's say, whatever it be, R&D or marketing, whatever. I would book a lunch, and we'll just talk, and it's a more relaxing time. But sometimes it's being more conscious of the way we use the time that we have in the office, right? Lunch meetings are great, 45 minutes, easy,
And it feels a little bit more chilled, I guess.
Absolutely.
Because you're not expected to come with an agenda.
Exactly.
I know that, people they want to reach out, but they feel that they need to come with something. And that's putting a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah.
And
So I think booking lunches is a great way to network, actually. But that is networking, of course, within the company, right? I think being open as well to reach out to somebody via LinkedIn and say, can I have a lunch with you? Can I, I think a lot of the women who have gotten far in their careers, I think they, at least the other that I've met, are very good people, and they are mentors, and I think they can be really good sponsors as well. So I think it's just a matter of us being brave enough to reach out to
ask.
Exactly. To ask.
That's what I figured out through the podcast, actually. We've had amazing guests like you.
Thank you.
And, sometimes we reach out, or like Daniel might invite somebody and they say yes. And I'm like, wow, look at this kind of person this leader who has said just okay to come and speak with us because we asked. And then I felt blessed that I get this quality time that most people don't. It's a privilege to have the discussions. Okay, going back to the board directorships, another leader came in the program who said the following to us, that, what, companies actually want women on the boards because it's great to have diversity. But the fact is, women are not qualified because traditionally C-suite positions have been going to men, and therefore we don't have enough women who are just qualified
for the pipeline and other.
So be patient. What do you think about that? Does everybody need to have C-suite experience to go after a position on the board?
I don't think so. No, not at all. Because I think you can have really strong entrepreneurs, for example.
Yes.
Who can make really good board members. I think you need a diversity of experience. So C-suite members are certainly good, but no, not always. I disagree.
What do you think would be like a good first step for a woman now? Also thinking that hopefully after July there is going to be more demand. So on the supply side, what would be good for women to be prepared to have the best possible skills to serve on a board?
Well, certainly a good track record at work would be a must, right? And I think reaching out as well, a good network, going into at least the people that I know that are serving on boards have been invited as well because there was somebody who spoke highly of his or her work. So that is sponsors networking, right? But it starts with a really good track record at the work, whatever it is that you're doing, be it a startup, as an entrepreneur, or being in the corporate.
And with regards to skills, like perhaps the speaking up thing might be one, because you really need to make sure that you ask the questions.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you have seen that you felt like, okay, this is something very valuable to have when you're in the board and you're having these discussions?
I think having as broad an experience as possible is also super important. So for instance, if you're in the corporate world, more than just marketing, have you done sales? Or even have you participated in an acquisition? Have you participated in let's say a site closure and moving of a plant from one country to another? So you know a lot about labor relations. All of those added skills, I think, bring up and solidify your portfolio to be able to sit on the board and help advise the company as best as possible, right? So to me, I like certain careers that are broad and diverse in terms of, not necessarily in terms of different industries, it could be that, but in terms of experiences within the industry, across different cultures, let's say stages of the business as well would be very important. So
Sounds more like a portfolio of experiences.
exactly. A portfolio of experiences is very good.
Marielle, thank you very, very much for coming and discussing with us. And it wouldn't be the FMCG Guys podcast if we don't ask you the famous last question that we have. So,
Yeah.
with all the experience, the portfolio of experiences that you have, and the different things you've done in your career, if you were to go back to that 18-year-old self, and before you've even gone out in the Philippines doing sales, what is the one piece of advice you would give to yourself?
I would say aim for the moon, because even if you miss, you're bound to end up among the stars.
Thank you very, very much. This was Marielle Lopez. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to follow us on LinkedIn and listen to the episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. See you next time.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from Dwyer Partners SL, doing business as the FMCG Guys, or the individual author, host, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Dwyer Partners SL. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Dwyer Partners SL expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we presented in this podcast.